So thank you. So, Julie, I had the great pleasure of meeting you in person. I had met you in person a number of years ago at a Hendricks event, but I got the great pleasure of coming to an event that you were putting on, co-facilitating, and it was, um, as always, a delight to be in your presence. Your authenticity is such an invitation for my nervous system to completely calm, and your invitation to play is so compelling that I find myself really in an open, spacious place when I'm around you. So I'm really looking forward to this call tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and turn the call over to you.
Thank you, Michelle. And yeah, I appreciate just being able to see you and see the beautiful pink behind you. And I was reflecting on when you said free, it's free, no ads. The generosity of you, of Gay and Katie, like of what people have put into the world, just because, just for no, well, there might be good reason. I'm thinking of Gay often says for no good reason, but really just saying this is important and so valuable. And so thank you for creating this space and all that you do in the background. That's one of the things that I learned right away from Gay and Katie is, yeah, let's get this out there. So so thanks for being part of that. And everybody else, thanks for coming tonight to talk and play about power. It's great to see you all. It's as I try to, tune into your little teeny faces. So I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming. I've been reflecting really for days, but today, where do I start? Because I think about this literally, it's somewhere in the back of my mind. Maybe not all the time. That's probably not possible, but it's this ongoing context that I live from. And so to find a place and hope that I can be clear, well, that's my intention. So it's to tell you the best stuff of what I have to offer about specifically, well, it started with the drama triangle, right? And then what is that? And what does that really look like? What are the guts of that physiologically and other things that I've been playing around with that for the last, well, it's been a long time. I went to my first Hendricks workshop in 1995 in Wilsonville, Oregon. And well, it was 8 days, if you can imagine, if those of you have done these kinds of things, of me never having done anything like this before. My training is of clinical psychologist. That's how I was originally trained in graduate school, which is a little bit ironic now, because then the big question was, what's wrong? And I'll figure out what's wrong. And I'll give you the Rorschach so I can describe what's wrong and eventually come to a good diagnosis so we all know what's wrong. Well, that is not my context anymore. It's very much, instead of that narrow focus, getting into the, it's who are we when we're in the broad, open, I think of it as creative brain. What is our essence really about? When we're in alignment with our true selves, what happens? That's my fascination now. So I want to talk to you some about power and how I see it showing up. There's so many reasons that this is a compelling topic for me. I'm trying to decide, am I going backwards in time or today? So I'll start with back. I was the fourth of 4 kids in my family in the 60s. Anybody else grow up in the 60s over there? Well, in my family in the 60s, 4 kids, you kind of let them loose. And that was my experience, in the best of ways, but then maybe not the best of ways in terms of kind of survival of the fittest. And I was the littlest, so I wasn't really the fittest. But I learned so much about hierarchy and who I was in hierarchy. And of course, in that zone of 6, I was the bottom of that pecking order. So my context has very much been, in general, about what does it feel like to be power under, and how can I shift to equality, power with you all, because I think that's the sweet spot. When we're in that power with, connection is easy, it's natural, it's who we are as humans. So what does that look like? This whole context of this hierarchy versus, and I think of it as versus something that's beyond hierarchy. So I'm quite fascinated by that. Yeah, well, you can tell a little bit why in terms of how I grew up. But then I want to bring in also a conversation I had earlier today. So I see a lot of couples. I do lots of relationship work. I guess to add in, what else do I do? I run the Evolutionary Power Institute, which is a nonprofit in Boulder, Colorado. You probably know that. And then there's some familiar faces, so I'm going to wave at you all. I have seen many, many clients over the last 3.5 decades, lots and lots of hours of being with individuals and couples and groups and teaching workshops. So what I've come up with has been a lot of trial and error. Did this work? Did that not work? And then also from my own being, what helps me be happy? Because I think power, what is power really? It isn't, not for me. I don't feel powerful when I'm in that experience. When I feel powerful is when I'm walking around, my heart is open and I'm in flow and I can connect people I love. To me, that's what real power is. And so evolutionary power, actually, Kath, my wife, she coined that term. What's real power? I kept saying true power. It's beyond our definition of or our typical way of talking about power. The conversation earlier was with this couple, and I've been seeing them for a while. And at some point, I just turned to him and I said, we had some relationship. I may or may not say this the first session. Okay, so you know you've got the power in this relationship. Is that right? Do you know that? And he was like, and we talked about it. But over there, she was sitting on the couch, kind of far away. She was like, mm-hmm. So naming something, it's just so interesting to me. We know what we're talking about, but people don't talk about it. So when I say it, it's sort of like, oh, there's a bad smell in the room or something. It's like everybody like, oh, I know, we've been sitting with the bad smell. But until we put words to it, it's disconcerting. It's like this impact is happening, but we don't have a way to talk about it. Now, as I'm reflecting on what I just told you, just know that was a power over move that I did because I was declarative, and he's a guy that I thought, well, okay, I think he's, I'm gonna step in and be with him. But when we get to the how would you know? We're going to get into that later. How would you know if you're in a power over or power under or a power with? We'll have a checklist and I'll talk to you about research that I've been doing about that. But before we get to all that, I want to give me my context. Has anybody here ever read Power versus Force by David Hawkins? Yes, we got some nods. Yes, great. Because if you haven't, I would suggest it. I don't know when I read that. Anybody know when you wrote it? I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. I was like, oh, even more than that, Johnny saying so far. I don't know. Yeah. So I have endless gratitude. So many great teachers. Can we just tune into how many great teachers we have out in the world and we get to listen to them and talk to each other and like, wow. So he was one of them. I saw him in person once, but I didn't ever have a real conversation person to person. But I like soaked that up. Now, if you've read that, he has something called the map of consciousness. And I studied that, and I thought, well, apparently when I'm in reactive brain, I can't remember all these details. So I thought, how can I make this something that is easy for me to remember? And that's what I've created. And so I'm going to do, I can do a share screen. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what I've done and I can walk you through. Can you re-able my participant?
Oh, sure thing. I'll just make you a host right now.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
That should do it.
Very great.
And if that doesn't work,
that is working. You got the power. Okay, so here is, I better make that smaller, huh? So you can see it. And I will put that in the chat, or you can screenshot it, of course. We're all so Zoom literate anymore, aren't we? Remember when we didn't do that? It's hard to remember. So if you see my inner map, I'm going to give you a little tour. I think of this as my own personal mall map. I don't have the best sense of direction. So when I find one of those directories that says you are here, I find that very comforting. So that's what I'm trying to provide you with here is some way of saying, oh, I'm here. And so where do I actually want to be? So to imagine, if you look at this vertical line here, so what Hawkins figured out how to do, he said, oh, wait a second, these states, they're not just these very odd different states. You can actually make them sequential. Like there's a way to order them. Like, whoa, in my sort of disordered, agitated, depressed, anxious self of being, I thought, what? There's a way to order this? I just thought it was all ick or good. So to have that in my whole way of thinking is very, very useful to me. So he said, yeah, if you're way down here in shame, that is very close to death. Well, why? What does that have to do with death? Because there's very little energy happening. So if you remember a time that you felt that shame feeling, you might even try it in your body right now. It's like we kind of freeze up, we go down in, we pull in, we hide. So he said, yeah, because there's just very little energy, especially from the outside. There's probably a lot going on inside, but in terms of what's my experience, it's very pulled in, very contracted. But then when we get up to guilt, oh, there's a little more going on now. I don't feel as bad. I don't feel as bad if I feel guilty than if I feel ashamed. So that's interesting. Why not? Well, there's just a little more energy happening. If I keep going up the line to see, yeah, by the time I get to sadness, again, I'm not feeling great, but I'm feeling better than all this stuff because there's more energy happening. And to keep going up to here, anger, a lot of people really prefer anger to this because they feel pretty darn energized. So they're to see those particular states, and we'll get back to that in a little bit. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about those, how I see them. But here's the other piece of this. If you're around the Hendricks neighborhood, you have heard people talking about being above the line or below the line. So and I would do worksheets, learning. I can't. It's not, anyway, so people would talk about above the line and below the line. Like, oh, it started all meshing for me. It's if I'm below the line, what's really happening is I'm in reactive brain. I have noticed or I have radared and found a threat, and my body's going unconsciously, is going, oh, burp, 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 threat, threat, threat. And so that's a very adaptive thing to do, to be able to know and detect threat even before my conscious mind is like, oh, I should do something. My whole body it goes into this reactive kind of the fight, flight, freeze, faint stuff without me having to think about it. Yay, wonderful, because that's why we're all able to be on this call. Your reactive brain saved you. Who knows how many times? Anybody else have that? The moment, and then like 5 minutes later, it's like, oh, that could have gone, that could have been really, oh no. But somehow, right, our bodies turned the wheel correctly or jumped out of the way fast enough. Yay, reactive brain. Except for this little problem. When we're in that state of reactivity, we tend to, some things are happening. Like, why is it called reactive brain, not reactive body? Well, those were my terms. And I thought quite a lot about it. I thought, well, because my whole thinking is changed when I'm reactive. It's certainly my body has changed, but wow, has my thinking changed? So that when I'm in these states, if I'm in despair, maybe you can relate to this, my thoughts are about despair. All I can remember, my brains are associational, so I can remember other times, and suddenly it's like, oh God, everything just sucks, and it's my life, whole life has been like that, right? So when I'm in those states of consciousness, and I'd call them vibrations, then I'm also able to access lots and lots of information that's similar to those states, so that my mind is now shifted my mind changes according to what is happening in my body and vice versa. That's just interesting. So the sort of the good news is, oh, I can impact it from a more expanded place. But if I'm not, if I'm in a reactive place, in a contracted space, it kind of, I can spin and spin, right? You probably have had that experience, like, oh, I'm so mad. You know what else I'm mad about? And if you hadn't done the other thing, I'd still, right? So that we can get really stuck. And that's fascinating to me, is how to get unstuck from those places. But look above the line. Whew. Let's make that. Can I make it bigger with that? I don't know. It can disrupt everything. I can't quite see it. There you go. Let's make Creative Brain bigger. Creative Brain doesn't get enough attention, I think. So let's make it bigger. Oh, that was too big. So, but to think about this, all that stuff, I'll take my own breath. You all might want to breathe. Oh yeah, this is why it's fun to be in a relationship. Remember? This is why, oh, I was stuck down there. Why am I even here in this planet? But then I get back up here and oh, everything that's like the clouds clear. And I think of that this way, that way, that the sun is always there. Creative brain is always there, but when we are in reactive brain, there's a whole bunch of clouds. And so it can be very hard to find it or even think it still exists. But it does. And I'm going to underline, this is your natural state. That's what I believe about humans. Why do, different religions, of course, have so many different opinions, but a basic one is, oh, we're basically good. Of course, that's very arguable with all this evidence. And I'd say, yes, because when we are not in reactive brain, this is who we are. This is our natural state. So if I'm all upset and adrenalized and cortisolized and all in that reactivity, but then I sleep well, or I take a walk, or right, those chemicals move through my body and I get back to who I really am. So underline, if you've come to the persona talks that people have been giving, that's really what we're talking about, that I'll go into personas when I detect threat. But then that just moves through and then I'm back into essence. So that's a lot. And I want to add one more piece to this, and then I will stop sharing the screen so I can look at you and you can ask me stuff if you have things. This particular map, I added these words. Don't they sound so scientific? Well, if you know Stephen Porges, his polyvagal theory has become very well known. If you don't know him, you can just go find stuff because people have been writing a lot about it in the last few years. He says, yes, we are in these, our nervous system shifts when we are in these states and these states. Okay, I'm just repeating myself now. But he said, yeah, when we're in these open states, it's a ventral vagal response. It's a social engagement. I'm just throwing you words now, but it's basically our bodies are like, cool, great, I'm ready to connect. But the reason I'm going through this part, so if you look at these three states, agitated fear, anger, and pride. Now this pride is not, I feel good about myself. This pride is, I'm better than you. It's righteous. It's righteous pride. Now, something to emphasize here is we all have all of these states in us. Every mammal, I think, you might see my dogs wander through. I think they have all of these states. So it's not good, bad. It's, oh, mammalian has a threat response and it has the relaxed safety experience. We all have it. Humans we tell stories and write mythology and watch movies, and we tend to really seem this is a good place to exist in. Knowing at least some animals intimately, they don't seem to believe that. That's just saying. And I'd say animals in the wild, there's some interesting work. Lester Femi's open focus brain. He says, yeah, animals in the wild, they're like an open focus and all this stuff, even though they could be somebody's dinner. And then they go into a reactive response. but they don't stay there. But humans were like, oh, you know what happened to me? Oh, it's terrible. I know, isn't it terrible? Right? Oh, right. And we just kind of keep it going, even though the sun's right there. So starting to see this as a possibility that I don't have to stay in this stuff. And of course, that's what the Hendricks work is all about, is how do I shift out of this into this? Yay. But the thing I wanted to, and now I'm wagging my finger. No, these are these words here. So he said, Porges said, this stuff is mobilized. It's our sympathetic nervous system, right? Fight, flight. We're mobilized. Then this stuff, he called it dorsal vagal. Yeah, this is when we go into that freeze faint. So remembering yourself what that felt like. Oh yeah, the reason I'm walking you through this is because if you look at relationships, we now have a match set. We've got the mobilized and we've got the immobilized. So that if you've got two mobilized, why didn't you take that turn? You were always yelling at me to take the turn. Why? Because you never take the turn. Well, but if you said, okay, fine, I'll take, like, right? So that we do this back and forth like two rams, but then we can't keep doing it. It's too disruptive to a relationship. And so often somebody just gives up and goes into that dorsal vagal, that freeze faint response. That is very interesting to me. That's something I'm going to stop the share, see if it's interesting to you. Because to me, that is the source, the seed of any conflict anywhere. Underline. I'm going to say that again, because that's kind of a big statement. I love making big statements. It's arguable, but I haven't detected yet an exception. So you can let me know if you do, because otherwise I'm going to keep saying these big things. So I'm going to say it again. Any conflict is due to power struggle. Well, that's kind of intense, because that means if I don't want to be in conflict, I can figure out how to not be in power struggle. Isn't that easy? And we're done. No, because why? Because this is instinctive for us, and it's completely unconscious. Because if I'm making facial expressions at you, you are taking that into your system somewhere. And some of you were like, why is she doing that? Other people are like, oh God, right? So now, of course, there's nothing behind that. But if we had a personal relationship and I'm like, Jody, right? And Jody could go like, right? She'd go, what? Until I like, okay, Jody, you win, right? And then there we are, right? So we're until one of us submits. And now we're in a power struggle. Of course, we're in a power struggle here. If I'm like Jody and you're like, what? We're already struggling. That's why there's conflict. Two reactive brains trying to sort of sort out who's going to get more mobilized and who's going to get more immobilized. So once we undo that, we'll be fine, y'all. Or at least we know that it's happening. So because I'm almost 67, now some of you are young and maybe you'll retrain your bodies. I have not been able to undo some of these, what I think are very instinctive broadcasts. I just think they are. I mean, we take the dogs to the dog park and they're doing, anybody have dogs? Yeah. Okay. And right. And what are they doing? They're like, there's a dog over here and they're not quite looking at him. Right. But there's this whole communication happening. Who knows what it is they're doing? Right. They're probably sending off some scent and their tails are doing something. Humans do that too. My recent example of this was when I went to Costco, and in outside Boulder, our Costco, the gas line is kind of busy. You know, the line to get gas. And so you got to get in the right line, right? You got to maneuver around, but you don't want to be too far from the pump. And right, so people are maneuvering. Well, that particular day, who knows why, I thought, oh, here, I'm in the wrong line. I'm going to go over to this other line. Well, this one woman, I couldn't tell you who she is. I don't know. She, this is what she looked at, like, that went straight into my body. I know I had been a bad dog. Because I'm carrying it weeks later, right? So we do that with each other, and you can start to watch us. It's easier to watch other people than it is to watch me, of course, but other people are watching you. So when they say, what's wrong? You're like, nothing. Of course they don't believe you. I was really mad at Kath one day. I was really mad. I have no idea what about. And I was walking down the street, and my lip was doing this. And I tried to pull it down. I really, really wanted to snarl. I was trying to not snarl, but my body's like, too bad. So, okay. So why don't I pause and look at stuff, and okay, I'll come. Yeah, great. Anybody have any thoughts, questions? Because then I'll take you into the next piece of this very interesting world. Oh, my hair's sticking straight up now, but anybody, anything you want to say? Try to get it to sit down a little bit better. Yes, Janelle and Nancy. Let's start with Janelle.
Hi, Julie. I am curious about the thing I've heard of like fawn as a response and how it fits into this. I think I've heard Katie say she lumps it in with faint, but I'm curious about what you're saying about like being mobilized or immobilized, and sort of I could imagine fawn being potentially mobile, right? You're doing something to appease your potential attacker or actual attacker, right? Is my understanding of it anyway. So I'm just curious how you would add that in, I guess.
Thanks for sussing that out, because I would say we're not so immobilized that we can't function.
Yeah.
But that placating, which I would put in with fawning, like, no, really,
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Is everything okay? Like, I would call that, yeah, an immobilized response.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. I'll keep pondering that. Thanks.
Yes, great. Keep chewing, and right,
Yeah.
we're just doing this together. It's co-creative. So,
Yeah.
and Nancy.
Hi. I have a question about the reactive brain, and then shifting into out of that, I'm sensing that the like if I'm in sadness, then I need to admit I'm in sadness, right? And go and then move towards, I've heard like people say welcome the sadness or welcome the fear, do the fear melters, and then hopefully shift back to loving myself. That's because when I read some of Gay's books on loving oneself, it seemed to me that everything comes back to that, even because things get buried, right? I mean, especially if you were brought up to not express any feelings, anger, fear, sadness, just shut the F up, right? Otherwise, you'll be annihilated, right? Annihilated. So those get stored in the body, and then as I progress to doing more and more work, I see that that's not what I want stored in the body, but things get triggered, and then I see that that gets triggered, and then I have to, okay, instead of saying I don't feel sad, I say, oh, I feel sad, because it's like Katie said in the fear melters, telling someone not to feel fear doesn't work. Or I've had people say, well, don't be sad.
Right.
Well, that doesn't work. That doesn't work.
So when I present this, it looks like up is good and down is bad. So thanks for bringing that forward, because here's my handy prop. Actually, I would say it's more like this. Creative brain is expanded. Reactive brain gets more and more contracted. And contraction is a good idea if you're talking muscles and you want some, You don't want to be just like, oh no, I think it's fine, but that thing is going to kill me right now. It's like, no, actually, it's a good idea. All of these states, sadness, fear, shame, I believe they're all adaptive. They're all functional. As mammals, we need all of them. But if we stay there, that's what life feels like. So it's much more about can I breathe through and let myself feel all the feelings when I go into the density, and then come back out into this creative open space. So
it's also learning to get more in shift and comfortable with those states than being in the reactive states.
Those upper limits, yes. Can I let myself feel really good? That be all right, instead of staying stuck in this because it's familiar, and because I'm good at those. I don't know if you are. Anger, fear, sadness, all that. Less good.
Yeah. I have a PhD in that.
Oh, genius. A lifetime of study.
Good. All right.
To say anything is wrong or bad, it is to say, wow, how much can I get my own self so stuck in that? And especially in relationship, right? People that are into, intimate relationship brings that stuff forward, the sadness, the fear, the shame, and then there I am in this, and I don't know how to shift out of it, and my relationship starts to just reflect just those states instead of those more expanded states.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Great question. Yeah, good, Jody. Hoberman sphere, that's what that is. You get the really big one, you can get many different versions. All right, well, then there's this part. Okay, so we're trying this out. All conflict, what? All, has to do with power struggle, power over, power under. People have different ways of describing that. Those are the words that I learned actually through Starhawk, if anybody ever read anything by her, power over, power under, and then power with. But there's all kinds of people use it. Power, now I can't get it. Anyway, so whatever you think. But when I do this, like today in the couples session, they were both doing this. It was very interesting. So he was a heterosexual couple. He said, well, yeah, I have been more like this, but it's been 5 years. I think we're getting more like this. And she said, yeah, I think I'm getting up there too. I mean, we know what it feels like. So you can play with your hands like, yeah. So to me, this is why somebody wants to be in a relationship. We feel met, we feel seen, known for who we really are. We're respected because we're equals. Yay. But this, of course, is not the land of equality. Oh, well, because we're mammals and we're pack animals. And our social systems, it's a very efficient thing to do to be in hierarchy. Hierarchy is great. If I'm in an emergency, oh, my little hand's up. Hi. If I'm in an emergency, I want hierarchy. I want somebody to say, Julie, go that way. And I will say, fine. And I will go that way. I mean, I will submit because, yeah, that's what my body is really happy about. It's an emergency. Let's figure it out. Can I make my little hand go away? Or is it just going to stay up there forever? Oh, well. Oh, you did. Thank you. So entertaining. Yes, so it's very efficient. All of those unconscious ways that we broadcast, we don't have to use language. It's very fast. But for relationships, not so great, because all that unconscious stuff that people are doing while we're sitting on the couch and like, right? It's the message is getting through. It's just the message is generally, oh, we are now in enemy territory. This is, we love each other. You're my beloved. But in a snap, the brain detects threat, and then now you are my enemy. Oh, a little tragic. Oh, well. But then that means I can get back there because the sun is always shining in creative brain. So don't believe your reactive brain. Actually, now I'm gonna, do I have my little, where'd it go? Oh, here it is. This is my reactive brain. It's a little tyrant. It says, Julie, listen to me. life is dangerous and scary. That's why I keep this one around, because it's only about 10 inches tall. So I don't have to listen to it. You don't have to either. All right, so the other piece to this puzzle that I would like to bring in is this really fun thing I've been doing. So I've been teaching these co-creative relationship weekends, because I like, okay, let's play in this arena. Everybody, let's find out more. And so one of the things that we've done together through EPI, there's Sarah, Sarah Wave, because Sarah's part of Evolutionary Power Institute. Hi, Sarah. Is people come together and then we try things. And so one of the exercises, you can still come, it'll work anyway, even if I've blown the surprise, is I asked two people, okay, one of you, let's say, think of you could try it now. Think of a ferocious animal. Think of a little meek, mild animal. And then I ask people to pair up. And they, of course, I say, okay, ferocious, now meek. And the ferocious chases the meek around. And then we try to figure out, okay, what were we doing when we were doing that? What were the signals? What were the things? Because then we add in sounds and we add in words. Yeah, you don't have it. Right. So we're trying to unearth, well, what is it how are we broadcasting? So I'm going to show you this because I think it's just so cool, so interesting that we can figure out what it is we're doing when we're broadcasting power over. There it is. So I'm going to roll this through. Can you see do you see the power over under checklist? Yes, thank you. I would like you to actually read along. There's a lot of items, so it'll take a couple minutes, but here's why I'm asking you to do this. We start with power over. In general, I have found this is a surprise to people. So I'd like you to take a little time to think, well, isn't that good to be confident and put together? Wait a second. Of course I imply or tell them that stuff. Isn't that helpful? But again, this is what we have gleaned out from, well, I'll give you more of that background in a little bit. So I'll put this into the chat. Oh, I said that about the inner map too. Note to self. So to get this into the chat so you can download it. But the idea is to just check when you're especially when you're in a conflict with somebody, what's happening? What's your behavior broadcasting? What are you saying? What are you thinking? With awareness, right? Then we can do something. So this is about bringing this to your awareness. Funny that we have great cacophony of barking outside right now. Speaking of power struggle. If you don't read every item, don't worry about it. I'm still going to scroll because I don't want this to be too boring. But it's like, oh, when I read this, I'm kind of like, ooh. So yeah, I do that. Okay, I give the silent treatment. I just thought that's what you're supposed to do, everybody. Of course, I think I'm better. We all do, except for when we think we're worse. I glare. Great. So to start to see that, oh, instead of those people out there are doing that thing, we all do this. We are all capable of this. That's good news, because that means that in an emergency, you would glare at me through the glass. And I'd go, oh, right. You would get the message across, and I would get it as your fellow mammal. Now then we get to power under signals. This part is so interesting to me. Now, I know you're reading and now I'm talking and I should just let you read. But then there's all this quiet space. All right, I'll be quiet a little longer. I'm going to stop the share and then I'll put it in the chat so you can see it and keep reading it if you want to. But I want to stop the share partly because I feel sad. Anybody else feel sad? Like, oh, ouch. Especially when first we got the one, like, oh, okay, yeah. But then it's like, oh. Now, as somebody who has done a whole bunch of individual therapy over the years, okay, now I'm trying to find the thing so I can put it in there. Like probably somewhere around 50,000 hours, I've sat with folks who have been in all kinds of different states of distress. Here's this other map. There we go. Right, low self-esteem, depression. I just feel so bad about myself. What's wrong with me? What if, of course, there's the element of this that is, right, of where that is actually happening. But I would offer you the concept that when somebody feels that bad, it's because they're power under somewhere in some very significant part of their life. So that we can do all the things and you can do all the things you're supposed to do and take the medication. And if you don't address the power issue, well, I don't really know how to end that sentence. You're just swimming uphill. But the power issue, if you address the power issue, it's the converse. It's like you immediately have some way of saying, oh, wait a second, maybe it's not me. With that couple today, so because he said, here's the reason I don't really want to step in fully to it's been 5 years, but I don't know, do I really want to be with you? It's like, power over, I'll keep you guessing. But you're so unpredictable. And we go along and everything's fine. And then suddenly you just do this unpredictable thing. Right. And so then, right, there's something wrong with her. I don't know if there's anything wrong with her, but I do think that being power down means some things. Like all you've got is resistance. You don't have direct access to power. So you just resist and you just feel kind of bad. And you have to shut yourself down and shut down your impulses and you don't get to be mad. Now, power over isn't that great either. Nobody's feeling powerful. Power over, when we're in power over, it's fine for a little bit. I'm in charge until we're like, hey, where'd everybody go? Why am I the only one? How come I'm always the one that has to carry the responsibility and make the decisions, right? If that sounds familiar to anybody. So getting stuck in these, it starts to seem like it's the truth when it's power. And we know, because we actually all know that there's power issues. We just don't know it's taken over because it seeps in just a little glance or a little, I don't know why I feel so bad. I have a different couple. I should ask, I'll give you time to talk to me about this. But a different couple, I've been working with them, a few years. And at different points, I'm just like, I don't know why you're still coming to see me. I don't think I'm helping you. I've said that to them. And what they've been stuck about is around sex. And well, that's a whole other session, isn't it? But there was a time she had sex she didn't want to. She got mad at him for it, and they got stuck. I don't ever want to have sex again with you. Well, what was the original thing that happened? Oh, it turned out, and I finally found this out this last time I met with them. They moved from a place where she felt really like she had something going. She was, people knew her, she was her community. And then they moved to this brand new place. She loses all of that. He's plugged in here, but she suddenly is in this very power down experience. She said that was crushing. And she said, I've just always wondered what was the trauma. And I thought, oh, that was the trauma. You don't even know that losing power means you feel that bad. So trying to spread the word about this, y'all. Sure, we've got our own issues, but so much of this has to do with us being stuck in certain states below the line. We don't know how to shift them. And then put in the fact that I don't like my boss who doesn't ever, treat me well, but I'm, steal the paper clips because I'm so sick of it. Right. Add that stuff in there. add in, wow, we keep fighting about sex, and I know there's something wrong with me. Why don't I ever want to have sex? Because, oh, it must be low sexual desire. Or I'm low power. And if we shifted the power dynamics, that stuff would start to clear on its own. Wow. You can see how much I love to talk about this. Yeah, Beth. Right? Good to know. Good to know. Now, there are things you can do directly about getting out of low power or high power. High power doesn't say when they're scared or sad. Sad, maybe. I promise you, do not tell you, they meaning me, they meaning you. We don't tell other people when we're scared if we're high power. Because what? We're weak, right? So if I'm in a high power, how do I get to a this with a power with? Oh, I got to show you power with. So much to do. So I get more vulnerable. If I'm low power, the thing low power doesn't do is say when I'm mad, because it's too scary, right? I can't say I'm mad. What's going to happen? What will be the consequences? And I'm not going to say what I want. But if you both, or at work, if everybody knows that's part of how this works, oh, I can start focusing. If I'm high power, I can start saying when I'm scared, and when I'm low power, I can say, oh, this is scary, but I'm going to say I feel mad right now, and I'm going to tell you what I want. I don't want to not show you power with, because we can all breathe finally. So okay, I'm going to do that. Power with. Whew. This is why we want to be in relationships. This is why we want to be alive. I can feel my open heart. Oh, you're playful and curious. Katie talks about play is the way out of power struggle. Part of flow. And there's more. Look, all kinds of things. So you can see why I'm a big proponent of power with, because life flows in power with. Conflict happens from this. I'm not saying I don't get into conflict. Of course I do. I just have a much clearer idea and path how to get out of that. Now I see we have 9 minutes, and the other thing that I'm just going to tell you about is that we did some research on this. We sent this out because there's an easy way to do that now. Katie, the Foundation for Conscious Living, yay, gave us money so that we could research this, because I said, okay, we want to prove that there's such a thing as power over, power under, and power with. So 350 people took the thing, and then you do all your statistical stuff. I didn't do it. The guy did it. Yay, thanks, Bob. We didn't find 3. We found 2. We did not find, this was all self-described. So does this happen for me when I'm in a conflict? Well, people self-described said, no, what happens to me is I'm a victim. I'm all power under. Maybe I do have aggressive thoughts. That's as much of that. But basically, what did come together, because that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to figure out what are the factors that come together. Power with is its own factor. But then we've got this other thing, if it's self-described, that's basically victim power under. People don't relate to this whole power over thing. We don't think we're doing it, which is why I wanted you to read that, because yes, we are. Confidence, I feel good about myself. Yay, I want you to feel good. I want to feel good. But if I'm walking around, somebody around me is like, well, I don't feel so good. Versus being more in flow. Flow feels more like, geez, I don't know. What do you want to do? Hey, how are you doing? This is what's happening for me. We're just being. We don't have to be kind of in that posturing. So, okay. And with 7 minutes for us to talk about this huge subject, anybody want to talk about it? Let's see. I'm going to read this out loud, Kathleen. Do you find that people can feel power over? Absolutely. In some domains, and power under in other domains. Yes. And so, in fact, I think if you're in an intimate partnership, here's a fun thing to do. I don't know if it'll be fun or not. You can actually choreograph over time who is power up and who is power down. And often it goes back and forth. Oh, I love you so much. Great. You know, I got a new job. Uh-oh. Oh, well, okay. Now you've got more money. You're making more money. Okay. But I got pregnant. I'm carrying the baby. Oh, wait a second. Now there's two of you and I'm on the outside of that. But you know, I'm going to work harder and make more. Like people go back and forth. So absolutely. And I just think it's natural. It's not like, so don't do that. It's more like, oops, I could have felt that in my own relationship. Absolutely. Like, oh, Kathy, she's got this big award. Oh, am I still good enough? Well, but then how can I move back into power with? Just by talking about what's happening, coming back into my body. There's very clear steps. Oh, let's see. The sheets. So I put the checklist in there. Do you tell me if you want more? Link be posted. Yes. And ways to shift. Appreciation, fear melters. My favorites. What are my personal favorites for shifting? Playing. Do I always want to play? No. Don't make me. But playing, I would say in general, meaning anything, right? Just being a little bit less right and a little bit less stuck. Oh, they're in the chat, but I'll see if I can repost them. What to do to get out of under power? Yes. If I'm in power under, the thing I'm not doing in hierarchy, here's another big statement. In hierarchy, I am disconnecting from myself. Why don't we feel connected? We're not connected. I haven't felt connected to you in weeks. Why? Oh, because I haven't connected to me, because I'm stuck in this whole other thing. So because you know this is how it is. And no, it isn't. Like I'm not connected to me when I'm in power struggle, when I'm in reactive brain. I'm just doing, right? I'm just reacting. I come back into connection, feeling it, tuning in to my body. We use SCW. That's not, anyway, you can go to the Evolutionary Power Institute website and you'll see more about SEW, sensations, emotions, what you want is a tool that we use a lot. Brings me into connection with me and then with you. So yes, this is not to say, oh, I've dug myself in this deep hole of power under. It's to say, no, the sun is shining. It's right over there. You can get back. Especially though, here's another shift move. Don't believe your mind. It's a little asshole sometimes. Like just don't. The mind does not wish the best for you. So shifting your body and then plugging in and anchoring into creative brain. Yes. Okay. So conflict often caused by two people. Oh, of course, absolutely. And it just resonates back and forth. Yeah, that's what escalation is. Another workshop we do is called Rediscovering Essence. And so it's because if you get personas going, if you haven't learned about personas, go watch those recordings. You get personas going and you can just watch it. So I might start with my hero. What's wrong? And Kathy would be like, why are you always asking me what's wrong? I'm like, what do you mean? Why are you criticizing me? We don't do this anymore, but we did. I'm not criticizing you, right? So it just kind of goes back and forth. Maybe escalates. Then like we both go into victim, right? So yeah, persona to persona, absolutely, it can just go back, and that's what conflicts look like. Yeah, from the wounding, from the patterning, from the personas, from childhood, from reactive brain. Let's see, would you say power over and under are below the line? Yes, yes, I would say that. And power with is above the line. Indeed. Oh, great. Okay, so Janelle might want to practice. Yeah, and so you've got this community and EPI, we've got a whole bunch of resources over there as well. So You are so lucky we've surrounded you with resources. You've got all kinds of things that you can do to again, here's a very clear pathway. It's not an easy pathway. At least it hasn't necessarily been easy for me, but it's a pathway. So I don't have to stay stuck. I can move out and move into that wonderful, beautiful, colorful, expanded state. I think I will put that handout in there one more time because people missed it. We have a whole bunch of videos over there too. Videos. Videos are the Hendricks and Michelle, and yay for putting that out there. And I've got a bunch of stuff too. And books, you can kind of see behind me, not so well. I've written 3, so they're all about this. The Inner Map, if you can see that up there. Anyway, Inner Map talks a lot about states. And then the Relationship Skills Workbook and Relationship Guide. Thanks, everybody.
Yay. Thank you, Julie. That is amazing. My mind is blown. Oh, wow. Thank you, everyone, for joining us and playing so we can all learn together. And there are lots of resources. So I'll leave the call open for a moment so you can grab those. Thank you so much, Julie. I so appreciate you coming into the community and sharing your amazing wisdom and genius. Thank you. Thank you.
Totally,
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Jody. Bye, Michelle. Bye, Sarah. Bye, anybody else whose name I don't know yet, but maybe I will someday.